Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, along with Dane Mizutani for a porch podcast. It's been quite a long time since we have podcasted on the porch, but we are here. And Dane, I have designed a very special training camp quiz for you. So play along at home. I've got 5 training camp questions that you are going to answer here on this porch. And then we're going to get your official pre-camp prediction. Just like at the end of camp, we'll get your post-camp prediction of what the Vikings record is going to be. So here's where I want to begin. The punting competition seems wide open. No, although I am interested to see Brett Thorson. Obviously, the camp quiz begins at the quarterback position. So here is the question, though, about the quarterback competition. What date do you think the quarterback competition will be decided by, and what could each quarterback do in order to sell you on them being a top 10 quarterback this year? So that's part A and part B. Start out with part A. What date do you think we will be done talking about the Vikings quarterback competition?
All right. I took some notes. I have it right here, though. I think if I was the coach, it would be the quarterback competition would be decided by Monday, August 3rd, because that's the first day of pads. That's me. If I was the coach.
Wow, that is fast.
But I do not think that's when it's going to be decided, because I think if you are going to keep up, I don't want to call it a facade, because I think it's a real quarterback competition. I think Kyler Murray is still ahead because he had a head start. But it's still a quarterback competition. If you are going to continue with that messaging, it cannot be decided that early, because then the whole competition itself would have felt like a sham. So while I want my starting quarterback on the first day of pads to get all the maximum reps, so between now and the first day of the season, first game of the season, I can feel comfortable, I don't think that's when it will be decided. But I think a week from August 3rd, so that would be August 10th, that would be a full week of pads. That would be a night practice. I think by the time we come back on Monday, August 10th, that is when we should see the reps start to definitively flip. I don't think at any point during training camp, at least not till late in the game, maybe even in that weird gap in between, are we going to get an official stand at the podium announcement from Kevin O'Connell, this is my starter, this is my backup. But I think it will happen gradually, and I think it will become pretty obvious who is the starter, who is the backup. But I think those reps definitively have to start shifting, or I think they will start to shift a week from pads. So August 10th, Monday, August 10th, that is when I think we will have at least some clarity on the situation as a whole.
Okay, because when you said August 3rd, I was like, oh, wow, so you don't even think that this is going to get into pads. But you mean after that first full week of pads, the night practice probably will matter a lot to this, and that would give them enough time to see how Kyler Murray has acclimated to the offense, and then how he looks when things are really running, when Brian Flores is really sending blitzers after you, because when you're doing it without pads, I mean, there's no pressure at all on the quarterback. So once the pads come on, that's when scrambles feel more real. That's when pressure is more real. That's when they start to feel like, okay, everyone's acclimated to the offense, and now O'Connell can send in whatever play he wants, as opposed to just, and he's talked about this, O'Connell has, as opposed to just, well, here's the scripted plays for today, memorize those. No, it's, I might call something deeper in the playbook that you're supposed to know by this time, and he wants to see how both guys react. I like that date. I was thinking by the first preseason game, because at some point you have to show your cards if you're Kevin O'Connell. And I think in the preseason game, it has been handled the exact same way every single year. Now, Kirk got COVID in 2022, so he could not take his one series, but he was going to. And then every other year, it's been one series for the starter. JJ didn't play more than that, did he? I think he only played maybe it was 2, but I think it might have only been 1 or 2 series for McCarthy just to get him enough dropbacks. But it was definitely not a lot, because O'Connell doesn't want the starting quarterback having to have his entire starting offense out there. He doesn't want the starting offensive line playing 5-6 series in the preseason, because if they get hurt in the preseason, you're going to be extremely mad at yourself for playing those guys. So you kind of have to show yourself by then. But I agree that we are unlikely to have Kevin O'Connell say, yes, fellows, it is Kyler Murray who is our guy. Just like he never said that for Sam Darnold until J.J. McCarthy got hurt, and then it was obvious. But he never walked to a podium and made a grand declaration, oh, yes, everyone. So I think that this is a really good pick for give him an entire week in pads. Then you've had the spring, you've had enough of the summer, but also that would give Kyler Murray or J.J. McCarthy enough time to get ready for the season, right? Because that's the base offense stuff, that first week of pads. But then it starts to get more intricate. And then once the second week is over of pads, you're talking about no more fans and where you start to implement real offense and real game plans for the Green Bay Packers. You need your starting quarterback for sure locked in by then.
Yeah, and part of kind of the calculus in me homing in on August 10th, I got to remember what date it is, Monday, August 10th, is that like not only do I want a gradual ramp up period of like a definitive line of demarcation, this guy is clearly getting more reps before the game against the Green Bay Packers. I want that feel across the team before the joint practices against the Baltimore Ravens, because while the preseason game one will give us a nice indication of, well, obviously this guy's a starter. I don't think joint practices should be used as an evaluation for the quarterback competition. Some might disagree with me, but those are the most important reps of training camp. I would want those reps to be used to get everything to kind of coalesce as an offense, not to decide who my quarterback's going to be. So I think if you make that decision by August 10th, gives you a little bit of time to ramp up with this guy as the starter before the Baltimore Ravens come into town. And then you can kind of just hit the ground running from there. So regardless of how I would do it, like I think we're probably a week out from what I would pick. But yeah, August 10th, I think we will start to know.
Here's a question about Kevin O'Connell and how he's going to handle this. Do you think that it matters to him about the optics of this thing? Because he's the one that has said it's a quarterback competition. Well, of course it is if you haven't named a starter. I mean, technically you could say that any situation where the starter isn't totally locked in and a franchise guy and has a contract would be a competition because someone could always fall apart, get injured, whatever it might be. It's like if you have Kyler Murray starting in a 100-yard dash at the 40-yard line, could always trip on the 50, right? And then you end up running by him. So there's no reason I've thought to say, oh yeah, JJ's not even part of this. But I did have a former NFL scout on the and director of player personnel on the show the other day, Jim Monis, and he was saying that he thought from day one they should have just said Kyler's our guy, because he doesn't feel like there's an actual chance of J.J. McCarthy beating out Kyler Murray, and they should have made it more clear for the team. And when I interviewed Brad Johnson for my story about quarterback competitions, he did say that he feels like it's a strain on the entire team because every guy's going home every day going, I don't know. I don't know exactly what we're doing here. So I think that's a delicate balance to take. But how do you feel like O'Connell will handle this from an optical perspective, like from here's how the presentation is to us and the public?
Yeah, I think optics matter to him, at least to some degree. I don't think he's sitting on social media like reading all the comments and then using that to make decisions. But I think optics matter in this way. Like, this is a guy who I think at times throughout his NFL career didn't love how things went down. So I think he's giving J.J. McCarthy an opportunity to prove himself, to prove that first year as a starter is not going to define you. And I think if you were to go out and name Kyler Murray the starter in early March when he signs that contract, that kind of goes against how all of the decisions that Kevin O'Connell has made with J.J. McCarthy in mind to that point. It kind of just casts him to the side, and then you're moving on from him. That's the optics that I think matter to him. I think not necessarily optics from the fans, but how, and I guess it's not even really optics. I think this is really how he is designed to interact with his players, and it's why his players love to play for him. Is I think he wants to give that rampway to change the narrative on your career, and this is where the optics come in. If you were to come August 3rd, first day of pads, and then say, Kyler's the quarterback, then like what was it all for? What was the spring for? What was the time between OTAs and training camp where I'm supposed to be, if I'm JJ McCarthy, working hard, working with my teammates, getting this offensive playbook under wraps, and then 3 days into camp, the competition is all of a sudden over. So that's why I think he will kind of move in this way. Kevin O'Connell will, not just because he wants the offense itself to kind of function at a high level, but because I think he wants to give that full rampway to a guy who maybe a lot of people have already cast aside, have already kind of made their decisions on in JJ McCarthy. But we've said this from the beginning. I do think it's going to be hard for JJ McCarthy to pass Kyler Murray. And I think there is credence to who you've talked to and saying like, this has probably put a little bit of strain on the team. I think Kevin O'Connell's aware of those optics as well. So it's a tough balancing act. You put yourself into kind of this box when you have this quarterback competition. But if anyone can handle it, I think it's him. I just think the decision itself has to be made sooner rather than later, so this doesn't bleed into the regular season.
So I end up thinking about everything in football. You know, people know that I like chess as sort of chess moves. Like, is this the right decision? Is this the right move in the situation? And I think you could make an argument for either way, because you are sacrificing reps for Kyler Murray, and that concerns me. I mean, this is somebody who is not Peyton Manning. He's not necessarily known as a guy who is just this absolute wizard and, you know, whatever, right? That is a mastermind of NFL offenses. That's not Kyler. That's not what he's ever been talked about as. And maybe that narrative is going to change, but at least as of right now, that's a fair comment to make. So I think he needs every single rep with Justin Jefferson, with Jordan Addison, with TJ Hawkinson, with Blake Brandel to get as locked in as you possibly can. So you are making a sacrifice. Are you making a sacrifice for a reason? Or are you making a sacrifice just for the look of it, or just so JJ McCarthy doesn't feel like his team gave up on him? Because I think that Kevin O'Connell has always wanted to make every quarterback feel wanted here. Even when Kellen Mond was struggling, I remember Kevin had kind of a heart-to-heart with him after a really bad practice where it was pretty clear that Mond was just not going to be an NFL quarterback. They had a long conversation. He was still extremely supportive of him. And I mean, I'm sure Kevin knew. And that even goes for someone like Jaron Hall, where it was pretty clear that Jaron Hall was not really built for this league after probably the first series of his career, when it was like, okay, that's the size speed issue is probably too serious for Jaron Hall. But even then, like there was this sense of like, I can help him, I can give him every opportunity. And I think part of his justification for even continuing to play Carson Wentz when he was out there getting murdered was like, well, you know, the guy's only got so many snaps left. I can't pull him off the field. It's almost like he has a little too much emotional intelligence where he understands the feelings of the quarterback because he's been in those shoes, and he thinks, how would I want to be treated? But in some ways, you can't always treat everybody in football the way you want to be treated. I think if this was Mike Zimmer, and I'm not saying it's better, I guess we'll find out, is if it was Mike Zimmer, he names Kyler Murray the starter the day he arrives and says, I don't care what JJ McCarthy does. He's got to prove it. And that's his problem, not mine. I'm here to win football games. That is a much more ruthless approach to it. And I guess you could say for JJ McCarthy, like, you got to grow up, man. Like, however your coach treats you, like, it's on you to go take the bull by the horns of your own career here. But I would say also from a chess move angle, that what if Kyler just really doesn't work out? I mean, what if he's just a terrible fit for the team, for the offense, and they are halfway through camp being like, oh man, then you have left the door open to just quickly pivot and not feel like, oh, well, they gave up on me, now they're coming back to me. But that's what I mean about how it is football. And sometimes I think, you know, the feelings part of it is important. And I agree with his overall approach to players and culture and building people up as opposed to tearing them down. But you can't do it when you're giving away reps that your starting quarterback could potentially need. So I don't think that it can go on that long into training camp. I like your date, but I don't think it can go much longer than that. How about could any quarterback on this team sell you on them being a top 10 quarterback during training camp? Because I know you and I both had our confidence deeply shaken in our ability to analyze camp quarterbacks after last year being very wowed by joint practices with J.J. McCarthy, and then immediately, joint practices aren't real football. So could either quarterback do anything in camp where you'd be like, I think they're going to be top 10?
No, I don't think so. No, the question comes at a good time because ESPN just released that article that got a lot of people talking about like the top 10 quarterbacks as ranked by executives across the league. Sam Darnold didn't even make that list. And that's Sam Darnold should have made that list. Like that is an example of somebody who wins the Super Bowl and still can't shake these narratives that define them early in their career. But if Sam Darnold, who just won the Super Bowl, who went 14-3 with the Vikings, then 14-3 with the Seahawks, and then won the Super Bowl, isn't a top 10 player in the eyes of the masses, then there's nothing that J.J. McCarthy, Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz, Max Brosmer, if you combined them all into one quarterback, it was just 4 skill sets into one guy. There's nothing that person could do to convince me that this guy's going to be top 10. Now, I think the ceiling could be perceived like through camp of if Kyler Murray starts to look good ripping the ball 20 yards downfield on these in-cutting dig routes, or if he throws another deep ball like he did on OTAs to Jordan Addison the first day when he dropped it in the bucket. If we start to see these things with regularity, and then I can project out this is what it could look like during the game. And shoot, I know how athletic he is with his legs. I could convince myself like the ceiling is going to be high if Kyler Murray is the guy. But to be top 10, like, no, I would still need to see it for a full year for Kyler to even convince me that he could be a top 10 quarterback in the league. And for JJ, it'd be even harder just because I've seen, like, I don't want to take anything away from the growth and the strides he's made. And I think he put a lot of time and effort into this offseason. I think he understood what he needs to do better, and he's went to work and done that. But what we saw the first year, to then just see like 10 training camp practices and be like, I think that guy can take a massive leap.
Right.
And be Drake, it would be a little disingenuous. And I think even the staunch J.J. McCarthy supporters, if they were to just walk away from training camp thinking he can be top 10 quarterback in the league, that would just be a little bit of rose-colored sunglasses. So neither guy, I don't think either guy could do anything over the course of the summer to convince myself that, okay, this could look spectacularly good. But I think if I'm being truthful, like Kyler Murray can probably pique my interest in terms of what this ceiling could look like a little bit more than J.J. McCarthy.
Can I just make a real quick Sam Darnold comment and then we'll move on to the camp quiz?
I kind of lopped it up for you. Go ahead.
Well, so he's started 45 games since 2022. His team has won 35 out of 45. Mm-hmm. He is in the top 10 in passer rating. He has been a top 10 PFF quarterback. He has in yards per game because his teams, while they did run a lot in Seattle, his team still put up a ton of passing yards in both seasons that he's played. My theory about why analysts and people inside the NFL will not name Sam Darnold as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL is that they were all so wrong. Yeah. And they do not want to admit how wrong they were. I think that that's entirely it because every bit of evidence that we have, even going back to 2022, shows him as being a top 10 quarterback. And also what's weird is that other top drafted quarterbacks get the benefit of the doubt all the time. Justin Herbert is the ultimate benefit of the doubt quarterback. And I think Herbert's great. But why does Justin Herbert get the benefit of the doubt? Oh, well, he's a top drafted quarterback. But so was Sam Darnold. This is who he was supposed to be. I can understand when there's a Brock Purdy where you go, I don't know, that might be Case Keenum. This is what he was supposed to be. But I'm sure when they don't win the Super Bowl again, because it's very hard to go back to back, it'll be, that's the Sam Darnold I knew. I don't know. I mean, if he wins like 13 games again this year, you're going to be like, what, are we still going to put him as the 14th best quarterback in the league? He has all the skill set, all the talent, came up insanely clutch in the NFC Championship game to get them to a Super Bowl. And then everyone's like, if first impressions just never die. Yeah. Like Joe Burrow continues to get, and I think he is a top quarterback, but Joe Burrow continues to get these super high ratings from everyone as a quarterback who's right there with Josh Allen and everyone else, and all the excuses in the world, oh, it's his defense, oh, it's his offensive line, everything else, when he hasn't been as good since 2021, and Sam Darnold continues to produce like this and can't get a sniff. I really think that that's just ego. It's everyone's ego. It's executives who didn't sign him, who didn't cape for him, who said behind the scenes to everyone, he's goes. It's all the analysts who said, yeah, the Vikings should get rid of Sam Darnold. They just don't want to admit that they were wrong. I think that that's what it's about. It's like the people who continue to say that Jameis Winston should be a starting quarterback in the NFL. It's like all the evidence at some point said, no, like you're just not a starting quarterback in the NFL. But all those people loved him so much coming out of the draft and so much when he had his little bursts of success that they couldn't move on.
It's why I can't quit Marcus Mariota.
It's probably time. He's a great backup. Okay, well, camp quiz, because that's a longer rant. I want you to give me the person going into training camp that is under the most pressure who is not a quarterback. So what person, and I said person, didn't necessarily say player, said person. So if you go into a coach, that's acceptable. Under the most pressure.
Yeah, I'll stick player. I like the tease of person because there are a lot of people in the organization under a lot of pressure this year. The team needs to win a playoff game. That's just the stone cold truth. But I'll stick player here, and I'll start with the caveat that it's going to be hard for me to kind of discern whether this player is going to be able to reach that next level by training camp alone, because oftentimes in training camp, it's hard to project out how good a defensive player can look. But Dallas Turner is under a ton of pressure for like this season at this trajectory and his rise as a player, because now it's all yours, buddy. Like that's it. There's no Jonathan Grenard blocking your path. There was questions, could he play the Andrew Van Ginkel role? It seemed like at times like they wanted the Dallas Turner to be this guy who drops into coverage sometimes, but also goes down and rushes off the edge. Pretty sure he's just going to play the Jonathan Grenard role now. He's just going to be the guy that rushes off the edge. And I think he's built for the pressure that he's about to face. I think this is a guy who was really like over the course of his time in the NFL so far has been upfront, has been super like forthcoming, self-aware of where he's at, where he needs to get better. So I don't sit here and say he has a ton of pressure, like wagging my finger, scolding him. Just it's true, he does. They just traded one of their best players in Jonathan Grenard for cap reasons, but also because they kind of traded the farm to trade up and get Dallas Turner. When you go back and trace all those picks, and it's not totally fair to do that. People are going to say when you go back and you look at all the picks they traded to get to number 17 to pick Dallas Turner, like some of those picks were traded within mind of trying to go up and get the quarterback in the top 3. But if you go back and you just trace all of the picks that ended up at number 17 with where they took Dallas Turner, it's a ton of draft capital, and it's a big bet on a player that they thought could be the best player, defensive player in that draft. So now it's time to see. It's year 3. You've learned under Jonathan Grenard. You've learned under Andrew Van Ginkel. You've learned Brian Flores' system, the ins and outs of it. It's tough as a rookie to come into the Brian Flores system. I'm giving him grace there. I think last year he led the team in sacks. Like there's been glimpses of this guy can be the special player they thought he could be. Now it's time. There is a ton of pressure on Dallas Turner to me, but I say that with like the caveat I said off the top. He could look good in training camp, but it's training camp. You're going one-on-one off the edge. You can't really take down a guy. Like, you certainly can't take down the quarterbacks. If he's living in the backfield, that's a good sign. But at the end of the day, you still got to finish on Sundays. Like, I think back to Jonathan Grenard last year. He had like 3.5 sacks because he didn't finish on Sundays. All of these things, I think we'll get glimpses of how good Dallas Turner could be, or maybe the vice versa, like where he still needs to grow. We'll know some of that by end of August into the early portion of September. But right now, as we stand, as we kind of look with, I think like 8 Sundays till the Vikings play the Packers, that's the guy I think it has the most pressure on him that isn't Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy.
I've been so impressed with the way Dallas Turner's handled all of this
100%.
because I think when you get drafted that high, and he was supposed to even be drafted higher,
Right.
like when we look at what draft analysts thought of him at that time, but 6 quarterbacks going kind of pushed him down the board a little bit. But he comes in and he's immediately behind a great player in Jonathan Grenard, and he doesn't get his opportunities right away. And maybe if he had played every snap in 2024 and wasn't that great, but got like 6 sacks, people wouldn't have ever talked about, oh, is he a bust? Is this a bad pick or whatever? Mm-hmm. And then last year, midway through last season, it was fair to wonder, like, is this ever going to work out? Because he was having to take on that Van Ginkel role, which was molded for Van Ginkel over many years. I mean, that's the hard part about trying to adapt to that. And no surprise, Eric Wilson can kind of handle it better because he's 32 years old or 31 years old. So a young player trying to learn it was very tough. And then he gets into that Grenard spot and the light comes on, and it wasn't perfect, but he had some pretty darn good games down the stretch. That Chicago game, I remember being really good for him. And Seattle, he was outstanding against Seattle. It didn't matter, but he was terrific in that game. Green Bay was another one. So I think that it kind of went unnoticed that sometimes because things were going so poorly for the team overall, but he really did have a great finish to the end of the season. Mm-hmm. Now it's about picking that up and taking it on as a starter. But the way he's handled it in front of us, and when you listen to him talk about his role and how he's just been trying to learn everything he can. And halfway through his first season, Brian Flores told us that he sat down with him and said, here's what you got to do to get to the next level, especially with keeping your body in the right shape, because it's hard to do over 17 games. And he took it to heart, and he came back last year much bigger, much stronger. He worked out with Jonathan Grenard. And I really took note when Grenard was in Philadelphia and said, hey guys, Dallas Turner's going to be really something. He didn't have to say that.
Right.
And when we're always trying to look for what comments are genuine and what comments are just sort of being said, something like that is genuine because you don't have to say it. Yeah. So, and Grenard told me the same thing at the end of last year when I did a story on Turner's progress. So I think that there is great potential there, but you're right, a ton of pressure of now you are the guy. I've got a couple other guys to run by you, and maybe you could grab one out of the bag and tell me which one you think. Josh Metellus, because he's potentially taking over for Harrison Smith here.
Yep.
Blake Brandel is another guy that comes to mind for me. And then let us not forget the first round draft pick, Caleb Banks. We're going to see him for the very first time. Do any of those names stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Metellus stands out for sure because I think quietly we've just maybe like as a whole, like reporters, fans, just the discourse surrounding the whole team. Like there's been, well, this could be a weakness or this could be a question mark. And that has kind of been centralized to the quarterback position. Edge rusher feels like it's been something that's been, oh, they need a third edge rusher. But we haven't talked about safety, really. It just feels like that hasn't been a hot topic at this point in the, but it really is. And like the depth there, it could be something that causes issues this year if Harrison Smith doesn't come back. And they are going to need Josh Metellus to be a stabilizing force, not just on the field, like off the field, in the locker room. But he has a ton of pressure on him because he has to kind of step into this role of being kind of the hub of communication, is what Brian Flores calls it. Like a guy he can trust on the field to see the game the way that he sees it from the sideline and then make those checks in real time. Truthfully, no one's going to be able to do it like Harrison Smith could at his peak and even towards the end of his career because Harrison Smith has a pretty singular football mind. But Josh Metellus is going to need to, in some way, shape, or form, pick up the slack there. And it's a big turning point in his career, I think, or like a defining moment in his career. Can you go from a guy who, I don't want to say took a back seat, but like Harrison Smith was the guy. He was the safety. And Josh Metellus kind of got to do all of the things he's really good at with the understanding that Harrison Smith kind of had everything else figured out, handled on that front. Now Josh Metellus has to do all of the things he's really good at and take on that role as well. So I think that's a good one. I think there's a ton of pressure on him. I think he has kind of been molded and built for this moment with all the years he's had to work with Harrison Smith, with all the years he's had to work with Brian Flores. but now you got to go out and do it. So it's the same with Blake Brandel taking over as the starting center with no competition. It's the same as Caleb Banks stepping in as a first-round pick. Like, all these guys have pressure, and we can talk about it, and there can be glimpses of, yes, maybe this could work. And they got to go out and do it on Sunday. So I like that group of players you listed.
All right, next question is, I want you to give me the biggest swing player in camp. Like, if they are good, it will mean very, very good for things for the team. But if they are struggling in camp, we are going to go, that's not good, folks.
Yeah, easy answer is Christian Darrisaw. Like, if he is in and out of practices and taking maintenance days and gone for a prolonged stretch of time, like, that could spell doom for the offense. The offense just isn't as good when the franchise left tackle is not readily available. We saw that last year. But that's the easy answer. Like, I think that one was obvious. So I just wanted to brush that or touch on that first before I got into my real answer. And it's why I didn't necessarily go deep into Caleb Banks for the guy with a lot of pressure. It's because I think he fits for this answer almost even more, and maybe a little unfairly. Like, we're going to ask so much of this defensive tackle who's coming off foot surgery, who some people think was overdrafted, to be like an integral part of the defense. If Caleb Banks is good in training camp and starts to show flashes paired alongside Dominique Orange, you can just, I guess, group the two rookie defensive tackles into one player for this answer. If Caleb Banks and Dominique Orange look good in training camp, if they can take what they do in training camp on the field at TCO Performance Center and translate that to joint practices against the Ravens, and translate that to the preseason game, and the next preseason game, and the next preseason game, if they start to look good, then I'm like, okay, this defense, like, I think they've made a very concerted effort to build from the trenches out. And if those two guys start to show flashes right away, if Caleb Banks looks healthy and explosive right away, if Dominique Orange looks like a space eater right away, like, that's going to be something that projects out to be a pretty good thing for the Vikings. If they look like they're struggling, like, Jalen Redmond's a great player, but there is no depth outside of that. So you're putting a ton of pressure on these two young guys to come in right away and be great. And I think they serve as kind of the swing factors of this defense. Everything else can be great. Everything else can be loaded on that side of the ball. But if Caleb Banks and Dominique Orange are not who you thought they were right away, there's going to be some growing pains for this defense. So I think they're swing players. Kind of cheating. I listed Christian Darrisaw, and then I listed two players. But I think your rookie defensive tackles, the guys you spent premium draft capital on, are the swing players on the defense.
I've got a nomination that might be unusual. I'll throw out Jawan Jennings for this because
That's a good one.
I think that we just assume it's a lock that Jawan Jennings is just going to be awesome and a perfect fit and everything else. But I will keep in the back of my mind 2018 Kendall Wright, who they signed, and we were like, this is the slot guy they dreamed of. And it just never clicked for some reason. And there is a little bit of, in my brain, a lot of other mediocre receivers got more money than Jawan Jennings. Like, do people see something about him that maybe San Francisco was able to squeeze every bit out of the talent, but it's only a San Francisco type of fit? Now, I think he's going to be really good for this team. But if he looks great, you'd be like, how are they going to stop him?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, any of these quarterbacks should be able to play if Jawan Jennings looks great. And also, obviously, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. Like, this is the best group of weapons maybe in the NFL if Jawan Jennings is good. So if he is catching balls all day long and looks like he's really clicking with Kevin O'Connell's offense, we like what role we kind of see for him, I would go into the season feeling like this should really work. But if he's kind of a ghost, or he's not getting as many first team reps as we thought, or so, like something's amiss there, then I'm going to go, well, now where's the depth that you were so excited about? Like, now are we talking about Ty Felton, or are we talking about Miles Price or something like that? Like, it's just going to have this different feel. And I guess health goes into that as well. Obviously, Caleb Banks is a great answer because I think they're going to have to lean on him a lot. They like to use these 5-man fronts. So that's putting Caleb Banks on the field a lot. Levi Drake Rodriguez is another one who's, I think, maybe overlooked in this, but I think they're excited about for a training camp to see where he can go. But Banks is supposed to be the guy right away. Even if they've talked about him as trying to develop him slowly, we know he's going to be needed in order for this defense to be great. All right, how about this? I want you to put on your Nolan Teasley cap. If you were Mr. Teasley, what would you be thinking about most going into training camp and then at training camp? Like, we know the general manager is out there on the field. Rick Spielman used to stand like near the goal line, and he would watch from all the way back there. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah would kind of wander around. I'm sure that Teasley will have his own thing that he does during these practices, but the GM is usually out on the field watching every one of these practices. So if you were in his seat, what would you be focused on or thinking about most as you watch your team for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I would be thinking about the quarterback,
Right,
and what that's going to look like, what that could mean for this year, and trying to project out what that could mean down the road. Feel like that's an obvious answer. Like, everyone's going to be looking at the quarterback. But if I'm Nolan Teasley, like, I think one of the first things that would come to my mind is, do I need an edge rusher number 3? And I think the answer is yes. And I think at some point they're going to sign a third edge rusher. I think edge rusher 3 doesn't play for the Vikings yet. I think they will go out and sign one of the veterans that are on the market. Take your pick. There's a bunch. Doesn't mean that guy's going to come in and light the world on fire. I just think you need more veteran depth. So, but like, outside of like obvious things that I think he's paying attention to, quarterback, edge rusher, certain things on the, the very forefront of the conversation. Like, I think if you're Nolan Teasley, you have to go into training camp with an acute eye on the secondary and like the depth in the secondary, and like have like a real like come to Jesus, like, is this what we really think it can be? Like, how good can this group be? Because at cornerback, like, you have Byron Murphy Jr., you have Isaiah Rodgers, like, the James Pierre Kool-Aid is flowing. Like, do you think he can be like a legitimate number 3 cornerback, or a guy who can play outside that you can bump Byron Murphy Jr. inside? Or is that just like fun things that we talked about at the beginning of free agency when the Vikings didn't sign anybody? Like, I am inclined to believe Brian Flores when he homes in on a guy, but they also took a chance on Jeff Okudah and nothing happened there. So do I think James Pierre is Jeff Okudah? No, I think James Pierre could truly be a late bloomer. I think the metrics show that he has started to take steps forward in his development as a player. But like, I am starting to, if I'm Nolan Teasley, looking at the cornerback position after James Pierre, Chuck Demmings, like, is he my cornerback 4? Like, after that, Dwight McGlothern, Zamaya Vaughn. If you don't think James Pierre can cut it, then you probably have to go get somebody else too. And that same I said secondary because that same conversation applies to the safety position. We talked about the pressure on Josh Metellus. There's also pressure on Jay Ward, on Theo Jackson, on Jacoby Thomas. If Harrison Smith doesn't come back, and like, I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. I think if he were to come back, it would be during the season. But if any of those 3 guys, Jay Ward, Theo Jackson, Jacoby Thomas, don't live up to what you are trying to project them to be, then you might have to go make a move there and go find somebody who you can trust to play alongside Josh Metellus. So there's a lot of gaps or holes or potential voids in the secondary that I think if I was Nolan Teasley, I'd have a keen eye on in the summer, with the idea of, if I need to correct this or make a move, I got to do it before the fall rolls around.
I would be thinking about 2 different times as I was watching the training camp play out. I would be thinking about the trade deadline and wondering to myself and trying to answer the question to myself every day, how good do I think we're going to be at the trade deadline? And then I would be asking myself, who's coming with me? Because Nolan Teasley this year is in such an interesting spot because he didn't have to make any moves. He's inheriting this team, which means he has all sorts of time to evaluate it. And I would be thinking about which players I think are coming with me into the future and which players are probably not going to be a part of it, and evaluating that at every day. So do I like this draft class? Do I like any undrafted free agents that I think could be a part of this? My foundational players, I'm watching how they practice. I think Nolan Teasley, when he sees Justin Jefferson practice, not that you need to see it, but when you see it, it's incredible. Like the amount of effort that he puts in, the competitiveness that he puts into practice, like you're going to see that and say, this is truly a franchise foundational player. But you might be watching other players and saying, I don't know. Like I'm going to have to see how things play out. I would be thinking about more long-term stuff with watching this and wondering what percentage of this roster is going to be a part of my future as the general manager, because you're really in observation mode at that point. Yeah. And the trade deadline just being, if I'm watching camp and thinking, you know what, I just saw in camp last year the team that won the Super Bowl, so I've got a bar.
Right.
And this doesn't look that far off of that, but it does need another player or two. It does need another pass rusher, another, as you said, outside linebacker, edge rusher, whatever it might be, another corner. Then that might shape how his impression is of this team going forward and how good, because we know this, and this happens to me and everybody else, your first impression dies hard of a team. So when you see a team in training camp looking good and you feel like, man, this should be a really good team. It was almost like last year, it took a really long time for us to get to a point where we're like, they're just not that good, because we really thought in camp that they were going to be a great football team. Okay, last one, and then you are going to speed run the schedule, and we're going to decide officially where you think the Vikings will be this year going into training camp, is long shots. I want to know who you think. I said 3. If you got 3, let me know. Who you think the long shots are to watch that have a chance to make it. One thing about this is it's changed a little with such big practice squads where I'm on cut down day. You just have to tell everyone, yeah, they'll be back, folks. It'll be fine. But 3 long shots that could actually make the 53.
Yeah, I mean, I have 3 because that was the assignment. The first guy, has gotten so much hype. He doesn't even feel like a long shot anymore. It just feels like almost like a certainty. But we have to remember he's a UDFA, and he starts to do it in the summer after doing it in the spring. But Dylan Bell, he does fall into the long shot category because of how he got to the Vikings in the first place. Went undrafted, signed as a UDFA, and is here kind of just trying to make the most of this opportunity. But what he did throughout the spring was he made the most of his opportunity time and time again. And if he continues to do that in the summer, they're going to have to keep 6 wide receivers, and the 6th wide receiver is going to be Dylan Bell. He has done everything he can, and at least in my opinion, through the spring, to set himself up as a guy who exists beyond just who's that guy that we signed, 89? No, everyone knows who Dylan Bell is, certainly on the Hill, the reporters watching, and even more so, the coaching staff knows who Dylan Bell is because of what he has shown. So he's my first long shot. I had to give love to Smith Vilbert because I remember in OTAs, we were talking, and I dove into this Smith Vilbert kind of soliloquy, and we cut the podcast off because he said we don't need that much time about Smith Vilbert in May, which was true. But Smith Vilbert is just a massive defensive lineman who came in to rookie minicamp as just an invite and stuck around. And I think I mentioned this with Dallas Turner earlier in the podcast. You don't know until you know with defensive players.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard for Smith Vilbert to wow us in training camp unless he just runs over Christian Darrisaw. But I don't take making the team on a rookie tryout with, I don't take lightly of that. They did it with Elijah Williams. He stuck around because they saw something in him right away in April. And all of a sudden, there's Elijah Williams in June, and there he is in July, and there he is making the team in at the end of August into early September. So Smith Vilbert, more just because of how he continues to stay around. And then I talk about the potential lack of depth on the defensive line. It just kind of makes sense if they have their eye on this guy. Now, there's a lot of guys. There's Levi Drake Rodriguez. There's the aforementioned Elijah Williams. There's Taki Taimani. He would have to overtake some of these guys. But I think he's piqued their interest to some degree to at least be very much a part of the conversation at the start of training camp. And then a deep cut, Devon Armstead. He's a cornerback that he's 6'1". I think he's 215 pounds. He projects as a guy who Brian Flores should like with the size. He's a UDFA out of North Texas, and he just kept doing things in OTAs. So I don't know, like maybe he is cut by like the second week of training camp because somebody gets hurt and they need to move roster around and move off of a cornerback. But you see some of these sometimes these cornerbacks who stand out early. We saw it with Samaya Vaughn last year. We saw it with Dwight McGlothern 2 years ago. Devon Armstead stood out to me in the spring. So he's somebody at least I'm keeping an eye on in the summer.
Okay, I'm going to throw one out there. And you know that I like to come up with like a little slogan or something for the guy,
Yeah.
Trish season for Tristan Jackson, because the guy now he's on the coaching staff, but every year in training camp, mini camp, he would just make all these plays, and it would be like, all right, guys, it's Trish season. And so this one, I'm gonna call it the Triple D. Here's why: don't doubt Dante.
Okay.
Dante Fleming.
Hey.
Last year, Dante Fleming showed in training camp and a little bit in preseason that he could be a downfield threat. And he was on like the third team, and he came very close to catching another one in preseason that Max Brosmer threw in his final preseason game that helped Max stick around. But Dante Fleming has some long speed, and they don't have Jalen Naylor anymore. Who's going to take it? I mean, Ty Felton is clearly the guy that you would expect to take it, but that's a late third rounder versus undrafted free agent. Every time Dante Fleming makes a play, you can bet on me saying, Triple D, guys, don't doubt Dante. So Dante Fleming is going to be my wide receiver to watch this year during training camp. All right, let's speed run this. Here's your rule here. You get one sentence about every game. Just one sentence, okay? There's a bigger pod to pick every single game, maybe at the end of training camp, but we're just going to speed run it, see where you are with the 2026 Minnesota Vikings.
This is the best because I lose track, and then all of a sudden they're 14-3. But let's go.
Right. All right. So week one, opening up at home against the Green Bay Packers.
Win. I think they have a good training camp. I think Kyler Murray's going to be the starter, and I think they win that game, start off hot. That's 3 sentences, but I'll keep it short.
Commas would have made it one. At Chicago.
The loss. Soldier Field is tough for the Vikings at times.
Okay, 1-1. They go down to Tampa Bay and face Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Win. I think Brian Flores' defense can rattle Baker Mayfield.
All right. So they are 2-1 to start the season with the Miami Dolphins coming to US Bank Stadium on October 4th.
Win. Vikings stole run game guru from the Dolphins.
So now we're like doing staccato.
We're doing fragments now. We're not even. I'm making up for 2-3 sentences with some fragments.
Do the picks in Morse code. Like that's the way that just sounded.
The Vikings stole Frank Smith, and that will be the difference.
Vikings steal Smith. That difference. Okay, at New Orleans, they're a 3-1 football team to start the season. That's pretty good.
Win. I think they keep it rolling. I just don't think that New Orleans is going to be that good. I don't believe in Tyler Shugg as much as some people do.
Okay, a 4-1 start to the season. They are home against Indianapolis on October 25th.
Here we go. See, this is how we end up at 14-3 because I think they win that game too.
Okay.
And here they're 5-1. I said I think they could be pretty good this year.
All right. So you have them now as 5-1 starting the season.
Yeah. Should have done a little prep on the schedule. I did a lot of prep on the camp quiz. It's like 9 to noon on the podcast.
Right. Okay. They are a 5-1 football team going to Detroit.
Loss.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got back on track.
All right. And then Buffalo, I think potentially the game of the year, comes to US Bank Stadium on November 9th.
Plays them tough, but they lose to Josh Allen because he's better than any quarterback the Vikings can trot out.
Okay, 5-3 at Green Bay.
Loss. Here, see, now we've hit.
This is a season.
It's a tough gap. I mean, it's a tough chunk of the schedule.
Why are you so negative?
It's a tough chunk of the schedule. You go Lions, Bills, Packers. If they're beating the Packers, I think they're splitting with the Packers. So I'll take the win at home, the loss on the road.
All right, 5-4. Now off to Mexico to go against the San Francisco 49ers.
Win. Vikings don't lose on international soil very often, except against Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers in Dublin.
That was against Kenneth Gainwell, and that's what you meant to say. All right, so they are now 6-4, and they will face the Atlanta Falcons of Atlanta on November 29th.
They're going to win that game. I have a Tua Tagovailoa jersey that they sold on Fanatics for $5 in my trunk right now. I think Tua's going to be the quarterback. I should have wore it for the podcast. And I just
Do you want to explain why that you would have a Tua jersey?
It was $5 on Fanatics, and I rep Hawaii till I die. I'm all of that is to set up the actual sentence. I have quit Tua. I do not think he is that good anymore. I think he will be the quarterback because I don't know what's going on with Michael Penix's knee, and the Vikings will beat Tua Tagovailoa and the Atlanta Falcons.
All right, 7-4. They are facing the Carolina Panthers in early December with a 7-4 record at US Bank Stadium.
Loss. I think that's just one of those games that you circle as a win on the schedule, but like you don't realize like Carolina's built out a freaking really good defense.
Really good D, yeah.
And assuming that Bryce Young doesn't just freak out in the face of the Brian Flores defense, I think they have enough offensively to contend.
So what a roller coaster this has been. I guess the Vikings wouldn't have it any other way. Now 8-4 headed to New England.
Are they 8-4? Are they 7-5?
You said loss. 7-5.
loss.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had already written that down as a win in my head. 7-5.
Road against New England, loss.
Okay,
Drake May is the
7-6.
truth. That's my sentence.
7-6. Detroit comes to Minnesota.
I think they get it done. I can't get out of my head. That's a win. So
Okay.
we'll go. We're at 8-6. They beat Detroit. They beat the Lions with Max Brosmer on Christmas. I think they can get a win at home against the Lions. I think the Lions will be better than they were last year, but yeah, win.
Okay, so now Washington comes here with the Vikings sitting at 8-6, and that is on December 27th.
Loss. Jaden Daniels won't be as bad as he was last year. He also will probably be more healthy. Caveat: if Jaden Daniels is hurt, Marcus Mariota is the quarterback. It's probably a loss for the Vikings.
Yeah,
Sorry, guys.
that went great last year
guys.
when he came off the bench.
Yeah. They're going to lose. I think they'll lose that game.
8-7, headed to the New York Jets, and Brady Cook, presumably the starting quarterback, possibly Brooks Bollinger.
Win. Are the Jets going to win any games?
I think they will.
Yeah,
I think Gino will get them a couple wins. I just don't think they're going to be very good.
Yeah,
so
Vikings win that game.
So you have 9-7. The over/under on FanDuel is 8.5. So they have cleared the over here, and they are facing the Chicago Bears. Now, also, the Vikings are plus 500 on FanDuel to win the division. So do you think that there will be consequences for the playoffs, for the division, as they face the Chicago Bears as a 9-7 football team for the last game of the season?
Wow, this is as good as I've ever done with the exercise. I picked them from the jump to have 10 wins. So I think they win this game, and I think they're going to need to win this game to make the playoffs. So I think there will be a ton of consequence on the game itself, but you're hosting the Bears at home with a playoff spot on the line in this scenario. I think they get the job done, and then we roll the dice and see if Kevin O'Connell can get that first win, this first playoff win of his era.
So let me ask this question. Let me lean back and ask this question. Let me lean back. Now we're looking into the future. So you picked them to go 10-7.
Yeah.
They beat the FanDuel over/under of 8.5. And presumably that means whoever played quarterback played pretty well. Is it a success just to go 10-7, regardless of what happens in the postseason? Or do you need a playoff win for this team to be deemed successful?
I think nationally it would be deemed a success if you can go into training camp with a question mark at the quarterback, and is it going to be Kyler Murray? Is it going to be J.J. McCarthy? If they go 10-7 and make the playoffs, if Kyler Murray is the guy in that scenario, I think nationally people will say, wow, that was pretty good. Like they squeezed a lot of juice out of that orange, and they were able to make the most with what was there. And if they go 10-7, presumably Kyler looked pretty good as they did it. Nationally, I think it would be viewed as a success regardless of what happened in the playoffs. Locally, no. I think you have to win a playoff game. I think people are hungry for that here. I think it's easy, like for national people to kind of parachute in and out of Minnesota, either physically or just, talking about them as a talking head and say, wow, they made the playoffs with this guy. Another reclamation project win for Kevin O'Connell. I think locally you haven't won a playoff game since Mike Zimmer was in charge. So you need to do that. And I think if they do, regardless if it's Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy, if they win a playoff game with that guy at the helm, that guy will be the quarterback next year too. I think that's the barometer for who, is there going to be a change next year at the quarterback position, or are we going to have some stability for the first time in a while? If they make the playoffs and win a playoff game, whoever is leading the charge will be the quarterback in 2027.
I've just observed this over the years with so many seasons that have not had playoff wins, is it feels so empty when you don't get at least one. Like, the difference between getting 1 and 0 in playoffs is so enormous for how that season feels. If you win a playoff game, you go to the divisional round, you feel like there's real possibilities there. And my bar for a successful season, and I know that there's a lot of Vikings fans who are like, if we didn't win the Super Bowl, it's a terrible season. Okay, I get it, and a lot of you have watched so many seasons that weren't worth it that, I get why that's your, if we didn't make the Super Bowl, then everything's a failure. But the way I look at it is, if you put yourself in a position where you could have, where it was there for you, then you've succeeded. So 2017 is an example of that, where you put yourself in a position by winning 13 games, by having the number 1 defense in the NFL, by winning the playoff game to go to the NFC Championship, where you could have won the Super Bowl. It didn't work out. Matchup was terrible for you. The Minneapolis Miracle, all the emotion that went along with that, the stress of a crazy physical game, the injuries that were sustained against New Orleans, the offensive line injuries at the right tackle position, et cetera, all that stuff played into it. But at the end of the day, we look back at 2017 and say, that was a good season for them. I think 2019 was very much on the cusp of that. Like, you get a great win against New Orleans, but we kind of had a feeling if you don't beat San Francisco, then this group did not get back to where they were supposed to be. So it could be relative a little bit, but I still think we look at 2019 as that was so much weight for how you feel about people, including when Sam Darnold lost and then decisions were made based on that. So much is carried from what happens in that one playoff game. So if Kevin O'Connell wins with Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy or Carson Wentz or Max Brosmer or Jeff George in that playoff game, we're going to look at it and say, Kevin O'Connell proved he can win in the playoffs, at least to get there. Now the next step is to get farther than that. But if they don't, then it's going to feel like 5 years, and where did you really get? Some fun times, but it was more of dating and not marrying. It's great that we hung out for a summer and had a fun time in 2022, but it didn't really mean anything. And even 2024, same sort of deal. It was great to have a fling with Sam Darnold, but it didn't really mean anything. It's got to mean something this year. There has to be more than just, oh yeah, there was that one game, and remember that one? It's got to be more of a season than that to be a success.
Yeah, and we're definitely on the same page about that. Regardless of how it would be viewed nationally, you're right. You need to win that playoff game to make people feel something, to make it feel worth it. And it's not even necessarily the right way to team build sometimes, because you could look back at 2024 and they shouldn't have put that much stock into one playoff game. They let a top 10 quarterback, yes, contrary to what the ESPN rankings say, they let a top 10 quarterback walk out the door because they didn't win that one playoff game, which is why this year, if they don't win a playoff game, the year as a whole, and it sounds harsh, will be considered a failure from a lot of people. And it will be hard for me to argue the contrary, because even though I think we should have more fun with sports, and I think we get football for 4 months a year, so why do we watch it so hatefully sometimes? I get it. You want to at least convince yourself, like you said, that, hey, we had a shot that year to win the Super Bowl. And if you peed on your leg in the wild card game, like they have in 2022 and 2024, it's hard to feel like that meant anything.
That is a great way to end the podcast. Dane Mizutani, the Pioneer Press. I love the porch pod, man. It is
great.
beautiful here today. We got
fan
some
going.
shade. We got the fan. We got a nice little breeze blowing through when it's like 90 degrees out here. So I'm glad that you could stop by the homestead. And the next time that we're doing one of these, we will be covered in sunscreen and sweat and be probably inside in the podcast rooms there at TCO Performance Center following a practice. So I really look forward to your breakdowns during all of training camp and your coverage at the Pioneer Press. And we'll do it again soon, man.
Football.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with myself and Dane Mizutani of the Pioneer Press. And the Porch Pod is back. We're going to have another one tomorrow with a very special guest. So a similar type of show as today. But I'm live in the studio now. So questions, comments, thoughts, and feelings in the comment section. I'm happy to answer those. But also, I've been writing my training camp previews for every position. So I want to go through the first two that I've done so far over at purpleinsider.football and break down the running back position and the wide receiver position and the biggest storylines and go through the depth chart with you guys. But jump right in with questions and comments, and I will get to those as well. So I'll start out with the running backs, look at you guys' comments, and then we'll see if we got time for the receivers as well. So let me jump over to this is I'm going to show you guys what purpleinsider.football looks like. Here's the newsletter. Feel free to go sign up. You can sign up on the free side and get some of my writing, or you can, contribute as well to Purple Insider if you'd like. That is a good way to support the show. Sometimes, you guys will ask like, hey, should I do a super chat or whatever? It's all great. Watching is great, but signing up for the newsletter is a great way to do it. So here is a look at the Minnesota Vikings depth chart at running back, and Jordan Mason, of course, I think is the RB1 for this year at the moment. I don't know if inside Kevin O'Connell's head, he wants it to be 1A, 1B or more Jordan Mason. I don't know if we'll be able to figure that out during training camp, but Mason is, in my mind, RB1. Aaron Jones, Xavier Scott. I think if you started today, if you had to play a game today, Xavier Scott would be RB3 because he's played in games. Like, there's excitement about Damon Claiborne, and there should be because his speed is exceptional, his agility is exceptional, but Xavier Scott has actually gotten some NFL experience, can pass protect, he can play receiver if they want him to, motion into a wide receiver role, run some routes. We saw him catch a touchdown last year that was actually downfield. So at the moment, I think he would be RB3, but as camp plays out, that might change. And then Kajon Owens is a running back that they picked up as an undrafted free agent. He was a breakout college player at Florida International this year, picked up UDFA, maybe a guy that could potentially make the practice squad, and then Max Bredesen in the backfield as well as the fullback. And there's no fullback competition. So, what is there to even watch at Vikings training camp if there's no fullback competition? So here I wrote a bunch of statistics to look at for the running back position, but I want to go through the storylines that I have outlined here. The first is, do we see glimpses of Jordan Mason as an all-around player? Because last year during training camp, some of the talk amongst the coaches was Jordan Mason is showing us something from a receiving perspective, that he was catching the ball out of the backfield really nicely during training camp. And they thought, well, maybe he'll be able to step in and do some things as a receiver out of the backfield. That, of course, did not happen for Jordan Mason. And the other thing is the pass protection. And I want to see this year how much they're working with Jordan Mason in pass protection, because last year he was new to the team. I don't think you can simulate it that well in training camp. So, all right, first time here, are you going to be good at this? Are you going to struggle? And it just turned out that he really struggled. But it's not a size and strength issue for Jordan Mason. It's really a technique and identification issue. Like, you have to understand what your assignment is supposed to be against blitzes, against rushes, in order to get to the right spot. Because if you don't understand it, then you're not going to be in the right position to make the block, and then you're going to miss, and then you're going to give up a pressure or a sack. And that there were too many times where Jordan Mason did that last year. He was one of the worst graded PFF blockers. And if that can change, and they can trust him to go out into routes, and they can trust him to stay in and block, he could become more of an all-around back. Now, you might say, hey, is that really possible at this point in his career? But he doesn't have to be the best pass protector or the best receiver in the NFL. He just has to be serviceable in those areas. So I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis on that in this training camp of getting him up to speed with pass protection, because he's going to be used on a lot of first downs, a lot of play action and things like that. At least that's the way I'm expecting it to happen. So Jordan Mason, can he be more of an all-around player, and how much effort goes into that from the Vikings? Of course, Damon Claiborne, and can he play an early role in this team? Do we get the sense throughout training camp that, hey, they love this guy and they love where he's going and he's getting, first team reps or whatever, and they're not going to use Aaron Jones a ton during training camp because they want to keep him healthy. So do we see, maybe Damon Claiborne starting to get, more first team reps or second team reps where it looks like they want to use him as some sort of weapon? That is a huge storyline of the backfield, because the talent is absolutely there for Claiborne to contribute in some way or another. But if he doesn't get the offense, if he doesn't get the assignments, the pass protection plays into it, then it could end up being something similar to what we saw from Ty Chandler or Kene Nwangwu, guys who were just as fast as Damon Claiborne and had good rushing histories in college and couldn't find their way on the field because they couldn't really be trusted. So do we see it appear that Claiborne is going to carve out an early role as a big storyline for the Vikings backfield? How about Xavier Scott? Can he hold down a role? I was really impressed with some of the things that Xavier Scott did. He only had a handful of pass protection reps last year, but I did go back earlier this offseason and try to find them in the games that he played. With his size, he is 6'2", 215 pounds. He has good size and is a high IQ player. And that's really the only reason that he's here. He's a good athlete, but it's not like this guy was earmarked as a first-round draft pick or something. He was undrafted. I think it was New Hampshire that he played for. We're talking about a long shot type player who got here because he impressed last year during training camp with all the stuff we're talking about, with his receiving out of the backfield, with his ability to pass protect. So do they start to use him as some sort of third down pass protector or an option? Or does it look like, he's just going to be a deep depth guy and that's it? But I do think he's kind of the forgotten man here that the Vikings like it for some of his skill set. Next question from the backfield as we preview training camp, and I'll be going position by position just over different podcasts in coming days. Is Max Bredesen going to be a big part of the offense right away? He's got to prove it. But I think that's what they want. I think based on what Miami did with their fullback, and also last year when Kevin O'Connell started using CJ Ham the same way that he was used in the past by Gary Kubiak or Kevin Stefanski, they succeeded much more in the run game. There is something to this that football coaches until 2010, from the beginning of time, used the blocker in the backfield for a reason. Because having someone lead block for your running back is really darn helpful when you're trying to clear the way. But how much can they trust Bredesen right away to jump in there and play a role with the first team? Or is it going to be more development and something occasional? Is he going to be more of a third or fourth tight end for them? And that's how they kind of look at it, who shifts occasionally into the backfield. Will we get a sense during training camp of just how much they think they're going to use Bredesen? Because this team does want to be 3 wide receivers. You don't sign Jawan Jennings for nothing. So how is that dynamic going to work? Are they going to be more of an 11 personnel? Are we going to see a lot of bigger personnel during training camp? Do we get the sense that Bredesen is jumping right into the NFL and crushing it? Or is it like, this is going to take a little bit of development for him because he was more of a tight end in college than he was a fullback? And the last storyline that I have for training camp, because I'm trying to skew all these things not toward the regular season, but what we're going to be watching in the coming weeks when training camp starts on July 28th. 2 weeks away, folks, for the Minnesota Vikings. And can we identify scheme changes is another major question that I have, because we've talked a lot about it. And one of the things about training camp, I mean, fans will go and they'll film stuff and put it out on social media, and that's already out there and so forth. But you're not necessarily trying to identify too much scheme-wise from standing over on a hill, right? I mean, there's only so much that we can see and know from things that they're running. Like, oh, an outside zone play. Well, that doesn't mean that they're going to do everything different from the offense, but can we get hints of it? Can we hear from different people, from the running backs, from Aaron Jones? Maybe we talk to Frank Smith at some point just about the run scheme and how much could potentially be different. We'll talk to Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips about it. So do we get hints of the scheme changes? Overall, I think that the running back position is one of the least interesting for all of training camp for the Minnesota Vikings because there's just not a lot of drama there. We're talking about, hey, will this 6th round pick show anything? Hey, will this fullback show anything? Can we get a sense that they really want to run the ball more? But I don't really know about that during training camp. Can we get at least some hints here or there about that? So, okay, did my camera just freeze? I think that my camera just froze. So let me try to make an adjustment there real quick. I hope you guys can still hear me because that's weird. That is weird that happened. So did this whole thing, what just went on here? Okay. Let me try to go back. Okay. All right. This is a little odd, folks, but we're adjusting on the fly. All right. Okay. Backup cam is in. Sorry about that, everybody. But we got the backup cam going. Can I still get my hold on, fan chat? Oh, okay. I can still get the fan chat. This is what it looks like behind the scenes. There we go. All right. Okay. We're good. I think we're good. That was weird. That was very weird. So let me answer some questions and some thoughts. I don't know. Look, this is why we have a backup, my friends. This is why we have a backup camera. Because the other one, I think the light just like straight up went out. I don't know what happened there. Just died. But we got a backup. We're good to go. Okay, let me scroll up and get to some of your questions and thoughts from earlier in the show, and then we'll continue to have a conversation. So jump in, throw them in, and if things slow down a little bit, I'll go to the wide receivers and take a look at that position as well. But that's the other one that's up on purpleinsider.football right now. Okay, so Mike says Rodgers is underrated. Isaiah Rodgers, you mean? He was really good last year, especially considering his pay. People are too stuck on the Eagles game where he was left on an island with A.J. Brown. I've been banging the same drum, Mike. I really feel exactly the same way, that Isaiah Rodgers had a phenomenal season last year. And there is a part of us that goes with Brian Flores. Man, whatever this guy says, it's probably going to be right because he's been so good at identifying these players. Now, there are exceptions, and Jeff Okudah was definitely one of those exceptions, but for the most part, he's been phenomenal at identifying people, even like Eric Wilson, bringing him back as someone who wasn't even here, Brian Flores, when Eric Wilson was a Viking before, and then he ends up bringing him back, and they have a lot of success in doing that. So he's been good at understanding, if you put guys in the right position, that there might be more there than has ever been previously in their careers. So that's been extremely impressive from Brian Flores. And Rodgers was one of those guys. His athleticism is terrific. His instincts for the football are very good, and he could play man-to-man coverage unless, as you said, it's somebody that's so much bigger than him. But at least there's that extra gear to Isaiah Rodgers where I feel like the Vikings have been running out a lot of corners over the recent history where there wasn't that next level to them, where it was, this guy is maybe barely hanging on or maximized everything he's got. I mean, barely hanging on would be like 2022. Duke Shelley's out there making plays. They had a Caleb Evans playing quite a bit. Andrew Booth is playing. Cam Dantzler, I think, was still a corner when Brian Flores first got here. So Isaiah Rodgers has some jolt. He's got some playmaking ability where he can turn around a game, as we saw against Cincinnati. And, Byron Murphy can do that as well with his ability to catch the football. So I think they have a good cornerback duo. But one man down, and you're at James Pierre, who has not played a ton during his kind of long career in the NFL. And then after that, you're into, all right, Dwight McGlothern's still here. Chuck Demings is still here. Yeah, Fabian Moreau is still a free agent who played pretty well for them last year, and clearly Brian Flores trusts. But Bobby McCain is on the coaching staff. I guess you could throw him in if you wanted to. I mean, there's just not a lot of depth there, but that is usually the case in the NFL. It's hard to find a lot of corners. But I agree with you that I think Isaiah Rodgers deserves a lot more credit than he's been given. Let's see. I'm just so sweet says, why am I still not excited about Kyler Murray? Because you haven't seen him. I think that's a big part of it. Is Kyler Murray as a Minnesota Viking is just a theory at the moment and has been for a really long time. It's also another team's quarterback coming here, which Minnesota Vikings fans have dealt with for so long. And sometimes in really good and great moments, like Randall Cunningham showing up here or Case Keenum. And there were some really good moments while Kirk Cousins was here, but it's always been someone else's quarterback that they let go for whatever reason. And we could get into the details of the thing about the Arizona Cardinals letting him go, which, the Bron Solo says underneath that. And I know that, every time you've been in the comments, you haven't been too excited about Kyler Murray, which is, totally fine to have skepticism. But I also think that we need to be clear about the details of what happened with Arizona. They had no reason to continue to go forward with Kyler Murray. It just would have continued to be uncomfortable. They're rebuilding their whole team. And they had benched him and fired the coach that he got along with really well. So you'd be talking about a very uncomfortable situation with an unhappy quarterback, with a team that is in a brutal, brutal division that you could win 7 or 8 games with Kyler Murray. Why would you do that when you could try to get Arch Manning and rebuild your entire franchise? So I think that they did the right thing moving on at this point, playing Jacoby Brissett, playing Gardner Minshew, drafting guys high, stockpiling draft picks, and trying to fully rebuild rather than sticking with Murray. And he was clearly not going to sign an extension. And so when you reach this sort of impasse of he's not going to sign an extension, so why would you have him there to win you 7 or 8 games? Like, there's details to this that goes way beyond just, oh, well, they got rid of him. Right. Well, the Minnesota Vikings got rid of Sam Darnold too, and that worked out pretty well. The Cleveland Browns got rid of Baker Mayfield, and that worked out pretty well for Tampa, right? There's enough examples of this that we can't just give benefit of the doubt to, well, if Arizona let him go, then they must be right. Well, Arizona hasn't been right about anything since, I don't know, Bruce Arians has been there. But in terms of the excitement, I think you got to see it. I think you got to see it a little in a preseason game. You've got to see some of those highlights that fans take videos at training camp and see some of the throws that he's making. Like, really get to feel Kyler Murray in purple. And in the past, there were more preseason games, more opportunities to do that, to where you could really get the sense that, oh yeah, this is our quarterback and here's what he looks like and so forth. I remember Kirk's first game. He came out and had a touchdown drive in his first preseason game against Denver, throwing a touchdown to Stephon Diggs. And it was like, okay, welcome you saw it. You saw what he looked like as a Viking. It's really probably not going to be until week 1 that you really get that sense. And then that will be your first impression. And how he does from there will dictate whether you're excited about him or not. I mean, there's a lot of things that line up for Kyler Murray to succeed here. But I think that if you're standing on, look, until this actually happens, I got to see it, then I don't blame you at all. I most certainly do not. John says, do you think that the leverage in the coming Kyler contract negotiations has anything to do with competition? If they signal they're out on JJ early, then Kyler would have leverage after a good year. I don't think that it's that deep, John. Like you're kind of at a 4D chess level of that thought process, but I don't think that it's setting the stage now to not have to give him money. Because if he plays really well, then you're going to get to a point where you have to sign him. If he does not play that well, then you're not going to. And I think the hardest situation to be in would be if Kyler Murray played relatively well and your team was pretty good, but not great. And then what do you do? I think that the bar is extremely high. I've been asking everybody this
I asked this to Jim Monis, former NFL scout and director of player personnel in the NFL yesterday. If you missed that show, go back and watch or listen to it. And, he said you got to have a top 10 offense. If he proves that he can have a top 10 offense, that puts you in a position to compete for a Super Bowl. And I totally agree with him. And I don't even think it's a bad idea to just set that bar there and say that's it. If you can't, now 11th would be, I don't know. And passing game, but Kyler is so much a part of the run attack too, that just overall, okay, if you can't run at all, then we'll adjust the way that we're thinking. But if you can't reach into a top 10-ish level offense, then you're probably just not going to be good enough to compete for a Super Bowl, especially when you have this many things around you. I did see the chart that I've referenced before again pop up today about how often offensive lines played together. And last year, the Vikings starting offensive line in day one played together 25% of the time. So Kyler's got that going for him. That probably won't happen again. He's got the best weapons he's ever had. He's got a system that has had a lot of success with veteran quarterbacks before. I mean, say what you want about the different nuances of it. I think that the proof is in Kirk and Sam Darnold playing as well as they did under Kevin O'Connell. So Kyler should be able to recreate some version of those results if they're going to consider signing him to a contract extension. If you ever get to that point where you're talking about signing him to an extension, then JJ McCarthy has probably just sort of been left in the dust at that point if you're really having that discussion seriously. Now, if Kyler Murray plays, and here's where it gets really dicey. Let's say he plays 12 games and he plays really well, but JJ McCarthy plays the other 5 and also plays really well. Then you might have that leverage. I don't think that it starts now. I think it's going to be totally dictated by what happens in the season. Dan says, love Mason, but his bad pass blocking is a limitation. Are you able to think of any running backs who improve to average? Seems like guys tend to be how they are. Peterson talked for 8 years about how he was going to improve. Near the end, I was like, come on, man. Yeah, right. And look, he is, I believe, 27 years old, and you are pretty deep into your running back career at that point. I don't think that, and I guess I could look at this, statistically. The problem with trying to evaluate running backs in pass pro is that if you have a couple of bad reps, it can really crush your PFF grade because we're dealing with very small samples. You might only be pass protecting because like Aaron Jones had a really bad grade last year, had a couple of really rough reps, but overall during his career, he's been a pretty good pass protector. So you have to kind of get a bigger sample on that. Mason has not had a lot of opportunities to actually do it. I can actually look this up while we're talking about it. I'm curious now how many. Oh, wait, my camera's gone away on this one. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, I'll go back to this while I look it up. That doesn't look great. Okay, I'll go back to this while I look it up. Here we go. Let's see. Got to sign in first. And let's take a look here and find out how many times Jordan Mason actually pass protected out of curiosity in his career before he was a Viking. So you could see just by the colors there, it's not a great scene. Last year, he gave up 11 pressures in just 65 pass blocking snaps, which is really bad for a 25 PFF grade. The year before, so here would be the argument for being able to turn around. The year before with San Francisco, he pass protected 24 times. So last year was really the only time in his entire career that he had actually done this. He had never really done it before. With Adrian Peterson, he had plenty of opportunities to pass protect in his past and had proven it. But Jordan Mason was really the first time he had ever been asked to do it. So can you develop when you're experienced a little bit more, when you have more opportunities? There also might be something to you were switching quarterbacks in and out. You were switching offensive linemen in and out. And maybe the communication was not perfect. You also have a new offensive line coach. Maybe that factors into it. So I'm sure that there are guys who have found ways to improve it, but it's definitely all upstairs for Jordan Mason. I just wonder if that is the argument, is the fact that he is doing it for the first time last year and got beat quite a few times, but has a lot of time to work on it now. I would not be incredibly excited about his pass protecting because I tend to agree with you that if guys either have a sense for that or not, but at least there's some argument for possible improvement this year. Joker, how likely is it that the Sam Darnold decision looks even worse after this season? People in the league haven't quite accepted his ability. He could make us look even more foolish if he gets better. Yeah, I'm not sure how you could get better than back-to-back 14-win seasons where you're a top 10 quarterback and won a Super Bowl, but I guess you could. I mean, it's possible when you look at his age, one of the craziest things about the Sam Darnold decision, letting him go, is that he's still pretty young for a quarterback. I mean, Sam Darnold could be playing until he's like 36 years old or even longer than that, depending on how this goes. I think a lot of his success is arm talent, but it's also like his build allows for the arm talent. He is very like a strong core, and that's where a lot of the velocity comes from the football. And he really isn't a crazy playmaker. In college, he did a lot of crazy playmaking stuff, and he had a few when he was at the Vikings for sure, and a few last year. But he's really a pocket quarterback. So if he could stay healthy, and he's been healthy these last couple years, he could play for a really long time for the Seattle Seahawks. And maybe at some point, the contract or whatever might set up to where it doesn't work out. But I mean, I think Sam Darnold could be the Seahawks quarterback for a very long. I mean, you win a Super Bowl and you play like this. You're right that a lot of people have not accepted it, but that's just because they didn't see it coming. And that's how the analysis world works, is they decide very, very early. There's a ton of groupthink. This is kind of like the draft with this. They decide early, there's a ton of groupthink, and they never change their minds until it has to become outrageously clear what the reality is. I mean, so I guess if Sam Darnold throws for 4,500 yards this year and 40 touchdowns and is in the MVP race, at some point they will have to admit that he's one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL. It is absolutely ludicrous to have results like this and not get any credit for them from the national analysis people and the behind the scenes people in the NFL. I will never understand what they're looking at. I mean, the guy was even playing better in 2022 and then plays really well in his limited amount of time with San Francisco, plays absolutely awesome with the Minnesota Vikings, is tremendous with Seattle. Now he's going to have ups and downs. Every quarterback does, but every time the difference is if Josh Allen has a bad game, you're like, oh, well, it happens. If Sam Darnold has a bad game, he must have seen ghosts. He must be turning into a pumpkin. But what's a sample size that we need? 45 games where he's played at an extremely high level. I just don't know what else you need to do. And yet people will rate Caleb Williams higher. Like, huh? Caleb Williams played really well last year, but he was not better than Sam Darnold last season. He's more exciting than Sam Darnold, but he has not been better than him for 2 straight seasons. It's bizarre. But yes, could this look worse? Of course it could. Seattle brought back a lot of their team. They could make the NFC Championship again. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about an offensive coordinator change because Clint Kubiak was really, really good at this. And the offense was perfect for Sam Darnold. It's also very difficult to lean on one receiver as much as he did last year after year. We know this even from Jefferson, that it doesn't always end up with 1,800 yards. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if Sam Darnold put up another 4,300 yard type of season and, 12 wins, 11 wins. Of course. Yeah. Could this get worse? Yes, it could. There are Hall of Fame. I don't know if Sam Darnold will make the Hall of Fame like that. That's a really long way from now, but there are Hall of Fame quarterbacks that are in Canton that did not play very well until age 27. Jim Kelly was playing in the USFL and I believe arrived in the NFL at maybe 25 or 26. You have Warren Moon was playing in the CFL. Steve Young was USFL and then a backup, or it was with Tampa Bay and then a backup in San Francisco. He made the Hall of Fame. It's not unprecedented. Kurt Warner was a backup and then played for the, Iowa Crop Dusters or something. And then he ends up getting his starting opportunity. He goes to the Hall of Fame. There's guys who have started their ascension in their mid to late 20s and still ended up with Hall of Fame careers. So I wouldn't bet on that for Sam Darnold, but nothing is off the table when you win. And I know you could say, oh, well, they've got a great team. Yes, of course they do. Of course they do. But, and the Vikings did in 2024 as well. But it doesn't happen very often unless you play really, really good quarterback. And Sam Darnold has. Some might even say top 10 quarterback to put up numbers like that. And at what point do the results have to matter? There are some quarterbacks that are getting a ton of credit still that I just, hey, they're good, but the results have been better for him. And I don't know, last time I checked, that's the thing that matters the most. I don't know. It's a weird situation. Dan says I could see Bredesen as a serious Mr. Mankato candidate. I think that in order for a fullback to win Mr. Mankato, he would need some preseason moments. Like, he could be a beast out there in training camp and everyone could be talking about him, but does he have to score some touchdowns? It's possible. Does he have to catch a touchdown, run a touchdown, block the hell out of somebody for a Damon Claiborne 50-yard run? I don't know, have some kind of awesome celebration or interview or whatever. Like, it would take a lot for a fullback to win Mr. Mankato. I might also have to have other players who we've discussed as Mr. Mankato possibilities not really step up, because there have been years in the past where you just go, I don't know, like nobody is really rising to the challenge of being Mr. Mankato. So in this case, maybe that happens, but I think that there's enough candidates this year. I've got my eye on Chuck Demings for this, because you could just see an interception or two in training camp or in preseason games. Maybe he's getting some second team reps in training camp. He starts to build momentum. He's got a big personality. That's my pick. I don't think it's impossible, but if you were doing odds, and Chris Long used to do this, the television personality, not the defensive lineman. He used to put out when I worked at 1500 ESPN, because we were upstairs, they were downstairs, KSTP. And so he would come upstairs and go through his Mr. Mankato odds. So maybe I need Chris to do that again. But I would have him in the odds, but I would not have him super, super high. I think undrafted free agent wide receivers always go to the front of the line because they can catch touchdowns and make big plays. I've got, as I said earlier on the show, don't doubt Dante Fleming with a chance to become a fan favorite. But Bredesen could. I think he's just going to need to score some touchdowns. Joker says, next time you talk to Jefferson, can you ask him what him and K1, Kyler Murray, have discussed about leadership? They seem to have similar personalities and potentially leadership styles. So I've talked to Jefferson about his own leadership before. And when he got into the league, he did not have a big voice and was a pretty quiet guy. You could tell how competitive he was. And I think you could tell how intelligent he was, but you didn't see somebody who was going to be stepping to the front of the line and saying, follow me, which is what he's become and what Kevin O'Connell has really encouraged him to be. I also think O'Connell did a great job of encouraging Kirk Cousins to be that guy. But I would also say that I don't know that Arizona didn't think of this or that Cliff Kingsbury didn't think of this, trying to push your quarterback forward. You know what really helps the most when it comes to leadership is just if you're great. That's what helps the most. If Kyler Murray is great and they're winning a bunch of games, then his personality will get praised. It'll be, wow, Kyler, he's really become the leader that everybody hoped he could be. And I guarantee you that, his quiet leadership, his maturity, he's grown up a lot over the years. I promise you, if the Vikings are 10-3, after 13 weeks, those will be the stories. They will be flying national writers out to TCO Performance Center to sit down with Kyler to talk about how much he's changed, how much he's grown up in Minnesota, how much Kevin O'Connell has taught him how to be a leader. I guarantee you, because that's what we do. We reverse engineer after the results. I don't think that Kyler Murray is going to be a different person than he's been before. I don't believe that every quarterback has to go rah, rah, let's go, scream, jump around. And I didn't see that really from Sam Darnold. You know what I saw from Sam Darnold is every single day he showed up to TCO Performance Center ready to go. And this is coming from TJ Hawkinson, who I talked to about this at some point during that season. Like, what kind of leader is Sam Darnold? And he said, like, that's the thing about Sam Darnold is that he showed up ready to go. every single day. They ran practice. He was the same person every day. It wasn't, hey, today I'm great, tomorrow I'm terrible, today I'm prepared, tomorrow I'm not. That was how he led. I didn't see Sam Darnold yelling at teammates, like a Tom Brady or something, or jumping around like JJ McCarthy and super excited and dapping everybody up. He just went about his business. But when he did that and won games, it was look how great he is at leading the team. And he was. And I would say that that's the best leadership that you can ever have in football, is just showing up every day ready to go and competing hard every day and giving your best. And these are pros, man. Like that's the thing about the leadership element, is these are pros. This is Aaron Jones. This is Justin Jefferson. This is TJ Hawkins. They don't need somebody to motivate them to play football. They're all too good. They're all too mature. They're all too grown up in this league. You don't need that. They need Kyler Murray to throw some dang touchdowns. That's what they need. They don't need Murray to high five them, pat them on the back, celebrate every single throw or whatever. They need him to throw it accurately on time and them to catch it and run it into the freaking end zone. This is the NFL, man. This is not, sophomore year in high school. Sometimes I think, that stuff is great and it's necessary and leadership is good and everything else. But being good at football is the best way you can lead. And the best example of that's probably Ben Roethlisberger, who Pittsburgh players have since sort of noted that at a time in his career, he was the worst guy, but they were winning and like, hey, he got us a ring, so who cares? That's the attitude, right? If Kyler Murray gets you 2 playoff wins, they are not going to care if he showed up to their birthday party or not. So anyway, that's just kind of the rant. Like, they've got leaders that they need a guy to throw the ball. That's the main thing. Norman says starting quarterback for the Vikings in 2023. After Cousins suffered a season-ending injury and ruptured Achilles, the team utilized the carousel. Oh, look, are you an AI bot? Because that kind of reads like an AI bot. I haven't seen too many of these. These have been sort of showing up from time to time. I thought that was going to be a question about like 2023, what happened after Kirk Cousins went down, but it wasn't. It was just a bot reading me nonsense. Dan, question for near the end of the show. What do you do in the final weeks before it gets crazy? Do you watch random 90s games on YouTube? Well, yes, that is some of it. A lot of it is just preparation. I mean, so the next 2 weeks, the rest of this week and the next week, it's pretty much focused on this. The next 2 nights, by the way, I'd love to be live, but I will be live somewhere else. I'm going to be hosting on WCCO Radio on Wednesday and Thursday night. I'm in for Henry Lake. So usually that's when I go live. If you guys are looking forward to that, sorry, but you can still hear me. And maybe I'll talk a little baseball or something, a little LaMelo ball. That'll be fun. So I'll be over there. And then, but there will still be stuff that's coming up. I'm just going to pre-record instead. Anyway, just for scheduling purposes. But no, I mean, I'm not doing anything after this. Like once it gets to 2 weeks before training camp, I am working on bigger stories, working on previews, working on interviews, really setting the stage for you guys for camp, and also trying to get some last minute stuff done around the house, because once it starts, you just hope that no pipes burst or there's no, I don't know. I don't even want to say anything to jinx, because I've had it all go wrong at different times with houses. But, I just like stuff like that where you're trying to get a new couch or something, like, those kind of final details. But it's pretty much working like every day and getting ready. And, I played some basketball today. We'll try to get a few more rounds of golf in, but I pretty much end any sort of like relaxation or vacation time like 2 weeks before, because to tell you the truth, I get anxious. I get like really anxious about getting out there and getting to camp and getting started with this. So I would not be able to enjoy it. I would be just too much thinking about the work I got to do, and I just wouldn't be able to like lock in. Joker, Jets had to teach himself how to be a more vocal leader. Yeah, he did. But, one of the things is that it came along with huge success. If Justin Jefferson had been an average receiver and he was just another guy in the league, he would not have been thrust into that position. It would have been much more of, hey, you're just another guy and do your job. And he would have continued to do that. But instead it was, dude, you got this huge contract. You are the franchise player. You have to be the one that's driving everyone. But I would still say this, that Justin Jefferson's leadership style is his relentlessness and his energy that everybody appreciates and feeds off of. I would not say that it's Justin Jefferson's words necessarily and I really don't think players need that. I really don't think a lot of NFL players need the star player to step up and say, all right, guys, it's time to go out there and win this football game. I mean, that's great for TV. It's great for NFL films. I love that stuff in the old YouTube NFL yearbook things. I love Drew Brees' pregame speeches that they would show, and he's going crazy and everything else. But I just don't think that the pros necessarily respond so much to that as they do when someone sets the standard of the way they compete every day. Like Justin Jefferson at training camp, for anybody who's been out there, unfortunately you didn't get to see it last year, but any fans who have been out there, the way this guy competes is crazy. He is a psychotic competitor. Every single rep, he's trying to pump up the crowd. He's trying to catch a touchdown. He's trying to embarrass the defender who's trying to cover him. That's Justin Jefferson. And in 2024 camp, it was incredible to see him and Sam Darnold get on the same page. And at that point, you had the sense that maybe this would work for Sam Darnold when you saw him get on the same page with Justin Jefferson. And that's really what's going to drive the leadership is if he gets on the same page with the quarterback and he's succeeding, then everyone's following along. And if not, everyone in the locker room is going to be kind of going, all right, well, it's another one of these years. But even last year you saw, like, this is not a group that's going to give up. It doesn't really, I'm not trying to say leadership doesn't matter at the highest level. It does. Culture, I know it's very important. It's important from the head coach and the way he leads the franchise and all that stuff. I just think with this team that there's always going to be guys who set a certain standard for themselves that everyone else goes along with. Brian O'Neill is more of a vocal guy, but look at the way he works. Look at the way he plays. Aaron Jones, look at what he's fought through with injuries the last couple years to play. Like all that sort of stuff. That's going to matter. How hard you're pushing yourself to win. That's going to really shine more than anything else. And I think the same thing goes for Kyler. If Kyler shows up and knows what he's supposed to do in the playbook and they call out, hey, we're in a situational drill where there's 53 seconds left and we're down by 6 and we need a touchdown and the drive is starting at the 40-yard line, go. This happens all the time in training camp. Situational drills, Kevin O'Connell's really good at it. There's probably a reason why his quarterbacks have succeeded in late situations a lot in his career. So they do this a ton. Kevin O'Connell gets in, calls the play. Are you ready? Like, Kyler Murray, are you ready? Are you in the huddle? Do you call the play? Do you get everybody lined up correctly? Some receiver's in the wrong spot. Do you call out to him and set him up in the right position? Do you see the defense and then send somebody in motion? Because that's what you're supposed to do when you get a certain look from the defense. When you take the snap, have you set the protection correctly? Do you get the read? Do you throw the ball on time for a completion? That's leadership. That at the quarterback position. That's the best thing you can possibly do. And, with Tom Brady, we've seen him yell at people and everything else. And I think he set a really high standard for everyone around him. But I also think that Brady leading like that is the reason that he's talked about as one of the greatest leaders of all time. Joker, when should we expect Kyler to know the offense well enough to start a game and run any play that KO might call? That's a great question, Joker. I think that you're probably talking about 2 weeks before the end of training camp, where they stop learning and they switch over to game planning. And the way that the arc of training camp works is when they show up and there's no pads, it's basically like a glorified minicamp. It's like a fast-paced minicamp, more competitive minicamp, but they're still refreshing the base offense. And O'Connell has said before that he never assumes anything. Like they teach it every year from day one, from the start, as if everyone's learning it brand new all over again. So he should return with a very good sense for what they learned in minicamp, but it's more of a refreshing those first couple of days of, all right, let's get going with the stuff that we learned installing the offense a few months ago, get the rust knocked off, get back into training camp mode. And then when the pads come on, they're still installing stuff. And we are, of course, going to be tracking and grading everything from the sideline. But normally those first couple of days in pads are a little bit more the defense leading as opposed to the offense because they're still learning stuff at that point. But after that first week of pads, after the night practice, once you get to a preseason game, that's when it starts to become, all right, you better know what you're doing here. And there's a shift as the fans, start to, they close it down to the fans. Then there's a real shift to, all right, now we're game planning. And if you don't know it by then, you are in a lot of trouble. I think by the second preseason game, everyone should be totally locked into the offense and start the game planning process. But it probably isn't until really that night practice kind of, even in the night practice the last couple of years. I mean, Sam Darnold threw like a horrible interception during the night practice. It wasn't even a good practice for him or JJ McCarthy. So sometimes that's a little bit too early to start fully evaluating. I think after that first preseason game, it better be locked in for pretty much everyone. That's how I'd look at it. John, thanks for answering the leverage question. Yeah, no problem. The Daniel Jones Colts scenario seems possible with the offensive potential and injury concerns, especially if a Wentz over JJ situation happens, like Rivers over AR-15. Richardson got hurt. He had that crazy freak injury where he was stretching and a band broke and he like hit his face and he broke his face. That was crazy. So I think that Richardson would have played had that not happened, but neither here nor there. It's very possible that Carson Wentz could be the backup quarterback if they are totally displeased with JJ McCarthy and the way that he handles learning the offense or potentially being QB2. But you're right about Daniel Jones and Colts scenario is possible with the offensive potential. The difference maybe being that Jonathan Taylor was in the running for MVP when Daniel Jones was in there. They also had kind of a light schedule. I mean, I think that Jones was a bit of a paper tiger, but I get what you're saying. Is there a situation where you're talking about Kyler Murray playing so well to the point where they feel like, yeah, we have to re-sign him, even if he doesn't play the full season, even if he were to get banged up or something, that you're just, all right, we got to make sure that we are re-signing this guy. Yeah, that could definitely happen. Joker pie chart. How much of the Lions not converting as many fourth downs is luck regression, losing Ben Johnson and Frank Ragnow's retirement? I would go, it's probably, 20% luck regression. I think with that much talent that you can convert them at a high rate when you have a great quarterback and you have great weapons. And Ben Johnson leaving, I would say, is probably 40% of that, because he was excellent with play calling. And, Ben Johnson deserves all the credit in the world, but they made a bad hire bringing in John Morton as opposed to, getting somebody else that, I don't know, maybe brought a new offense to the table. I think it doesn't work very much. And this happened in Miami when they replaced, Brian Flores, and they fired Flores, they hired Mike McDaniel, but they tried to keep the same defense. It doesn't always work where someone else comes in and tries to run another guy's offense. You have to run your offense. And it looked like they wanted John Morton to be Ben Johnson, and it just was not the case. And then Dan Campbell takes over play calling. So I think it was huge, if not more than that. Maybe it's even 50%, and 20% luck regression. And then if I'm going 50, then it's 30% Frank Ragnow. A major part of converting fourth downs, usually you go to the line of scrimmage with two different plays. And if you have somebody who's really good at sorting things out at the center position, now the quarterback, of course, is going to be in control of whether you change the play. But if you're sticking with a certain play, a certain look, and then it's a guy who can always drive someone forward, that's going to be important. If teams just can blitz after Jared Goff and feel like they could get in the backfield, as we saw from the Vikings, then of course, yeah, they're going to be able to do that and derail some of those fourth downs. So that's how I would work it out. But all those things are still big questions. I mean, Cade Mays is going to be their center. He's not Frank Ragnow. And Drew Petzing is going to be their offensive coordinator. He's probably not Ben Johnson. I think Petzing has potential, but Ben Johnson is fantastic. And luck regression does matter. Yep. No, I definitely think, Joker, I agree with you that luck regression is a thing. And they were very different last year. Trey says Ashton Genty and Mike Washington are going to be number one running back duo under Clint Kubiak. I could 100% see that. And Ashton Genty last year, man, the most victimized player in the National Football League by his coaching and by his offensive line. Pete Carroll bringing in his son to run the O-line, just a brutal decision. Chip Kelly didn't know what he was doing at the NFL level after about 1.5 years in Philadelphia, and then got completely run out of the league when he just refused to change his stuff. That I remember one of the early film pieces when we first got our hands on the All-22 film was around the Chip Kelly time, and someone did a really good piece about how their indicators on offense were just so clear. They had such clear tendencies, and if you don't change it up, you're in a lot of trouble. So I think that, Chip has an offense that can work in the NFL, but I don't think he ever fully understood how much you have to adjust. And Cliff Kingsbury had the same problem. And this is a college coach issue. College coaches think my system works. NFL coaches think I have no system because every single week is a new system. Like, you have your playbook and you have your terminology and you have your base plays, but every single week's got to be a brand new thing. And I don't know if college coaches ever figured that out. So Chip Kelly was awful last year for the Raiders. I think Genty's going to have a huge season this year. Clint and his crew, it's kind of this wrecking crew that they bring everywhere, the Kubiaks. And they were in Minnesota with Delvin Cook. They go up with Ken Walker. Now it's Ashton Genty. I think they're pretty good. I wonder, I'm curious what their over-under is on FanDuel. I'm going to look this up real quick. Sorry if you guys can't see that very well. Let me look at it. What's their chance to win the division? Raiders are, plus 60. Oh, yeah. They should be plus 1,600 to win the division. I wonder what their over-under is, out of curiosity. Like, where's the bar for Clint Kubiak? Let's see. Las Vegas Raiders. 5.5 wins. I think they get more than that, right? They're going to get more than 4.5, 5. Well, they should get to 6. I think they could get to 6. I think that team had way more talent than it produced last year. Joker, who's the best golfer in the Vikings media? Mark Craig. I think Mark Craig, he's got some years on me. I think that I am probably, Jeff Wald from Fox 9, he kind of covers a lot of different stuff. So it's a little bit like there's a beat crew that our only job is covering the Vikings. So that's like me and Dane and Ben Gessling and, so forth. Emily Liker, Seifert, Alec, those are the like core. We only cover the Vikings for our job. And then there are other people in the media who cover a lot of different sports. But Jeff, I think, is the best of all the golfers in maybe even in Twin Cities media. And just amongst us, Mark is clearly the best. He's pretty good. He plays under 80. I'm flirting with 80. That's where I'm at right now. Flirting. The other day I played 9 holes and had a 39. So I'm like hovering. I'm trying. And I actually went and had a golf lesson the other day. So you're asking, like, what do I do before this? The last 2 weeks, I just can't do anything, but I will do a little golfing. So that's always been, I have not broken 80. I just keep hovering. I keep having 9 holes that are around 40 or a little bit under, and I just can't get quite over that next level. I just bought a shot monitor to tell me when I'm hitting into my net in the backyard, like how far I'm hitting it, so I could try to get a little more consistent. So I'm making an effort. I'm making an effort, but I don't know if I'm going to catch Mark. I think he's pretty darn good. Murph is pretty good too. Bernaldi, they got 5 practices before they name a starter. So you think it's only going to be 5 practices in? I think that's, or are you just responding to what Dane said? Because Dane said that he would name a starter as soon as the pads come on, but he doesn't think it's going to be until August 10th, which would be maybe like 10 practices in. I think that Dane's got it right, that by the first preseason game, we're going to know just based on how many snaps are taken. And I don't think that O'Connell is going to name a starter until the very end of training camp. I think he will at the end of camp. When they get to the end of training camp, I think he will say, all right, Kyler or JJ is going to be our starter. But it will be very clear before that. Very, very clear. Like, I think we will be able to declare it over much earlier than that. Joker, where does the offense rank in the league? Good, average, bad. Oh, running? Where does the offense rank in the league with good? Oh, where? Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Like, if they run well, where will it rank? I think that if they run really well, let's say a good would be a top 8? Probably not going to be at the very top with like the Ravens or the Bills, these teams that have prolific running quarterbacks, but top 8 you could be somewhere in that range. Where would they rank if they had a top 8 running game? I think there's a really good chance that they would be probably around the same in the NFL overall, that they would be somewhere around 8 to 10 if they rank there. If it's average, I would say from probably 12 to 15. I don't think the run game completely swings this team, but it will have an effect. So if they're average, then maybe a 12th to 14th best offense. And if it's bad, it's probably 16 to 18. And 16 to 18 just doesn't get it done. I don't think that you can just lean on Kyler Murray's throwing every single game over and over again. I think that's what happened with Arizona. I looked this up. The Cardinals, in terms of Arizona, like throwing the ball, they had, for Kyler Murray, the 9th most attempts per game. Think about, this is a quarterback that scrambles a lot too. So in terms of dropbacks, it would have been even higher than that. 9th most attempts per game during his career as an Arizona Cardinal. Is this really the quarterback that you want to be in the top 10 in pass attempts per game? I think that just says that they didn't have a good team and they just leaned on Kyler all the time. And if your defense is terrible, then you have to lean on your quarterback a lot. And if your running game isn't that great, then you have to, and they kind of oscillated between those things throughout his career. I think that the Vikings want to be more like 20th in pass attempts and 8th in offense, if that makes sense. Scoldger's Rise says, do you see McCarthy ask for a trade if he gets bumped to QB2? I kind of see it as unpreventable, especially if he has worked and progressed on the things from the coaching staff had asked him to do. He could certainly ask for a trade, but it doesn't mean you have to do it, right? Like if you're the Vikings, you don't have to trade. Look at the Indianapolis Colts. Like they're not trading Anthony Richardson. He asked for a trade. And people were already talking about, hey, could he be traded to Minnesota? And he just, right? Like is still, you're under contract. The team drafted you, you're under contract. And I don't think it's in the best interest of JJ McCarthy, right? If he loses the quarterback competition, let's say it's August 10th, where Dane Mizutani predicted it earlier on the show. Let's say that happens. He loses the quarterback competition and he's QB2. And they say, and he goes with his agent to Nolan Teasley and says, all right, I want to be traded. There's other teams that would be starting me. If I'm Nolan Teasley, I would say, no, not now. Now at the end of the season, sure. But I want JJ McCarthy as the backup quarterback because JJ can win some games. He's got enough arm, enough athleticism. He can win some games. And if you were to lose Kyler Murray for 5 games, you can win 3 of them, maybe even 4 with JJ McCarthy, depending on how he plays. I'm not getting rid of that because I don't know how it's going to go into the future. The fact that it could be so up and down, crazy, anything can happen. I mean, it's 10 years since Teddy Bridgewater, right? Like anything can happen at the quarterback position. I'm not in the world of giving away quarterbacks that have talent if I'm Nolan Teasley. So that's where I would be hesitant to grant that request. Now, after the season, if they are signing Murray to an extension, that's when you trade him. Or if you get to the trade deadline and it's Wentz as your backup quarterback because McCarthy is just totally flamed out, okay, then, all right, you're going to go with that trade and maybe grant that request. But I wouldn't be in a hurry to do it. All right, Dan, your last question of the evening here, I will answer, which is talk me into LeBron actually signing with the Wolves. I don't even think it's that hard. They're the best team. Look at all the teams LeBron's looking at. This is the best team. Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball in their primes. They're young. Rudy Gobert protects the rim, so you don't have to do that if you're LeBron. You can take on a lighter load defensively. And if you win a championship with Minnesota, oh my God. I mean, if you are LeBron and you win a championship with Minnesota, even if he's here for 1 year and they win, they will build a statue of you. They will build a statue of every player on the team. But the amount of love that LeBron James would receive, it would be iconic. I mean, you talk about what's your real opportunity to have one more iconic moment. He had it in Miami when he first won a championship with those great teams. And then in Cleveland, that's the definitive moment of LeBron's career, is blocking Andre Iguodala in his breakaway to beat the Golden State Warriors. That's the moment of LeBron James's career. Why? Because Cleveland hadn't won a championship. And it had been so much suffering and so long, and they did it because of him. I mean, it won't be because of him that they win here, but I mean, so much suffering for the organization. It's never done it before. My gosh, you want everyone to talk about how LeBron was the thing that got you over the edge? Like, this is the way to do it. So there's your pitch, LeBron, if you're watching. Joker, was Dallas Turner too young when he was drafted to realistically make an impact as an edge rusher? I don't think so. I think he could have. I just think that the opportunity wasn't there. If he had played in 2024, if Dallas Turner had played 750 snaps instead of sitting behind Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, I think he gets 6 or 7 sacks. I think he would have been fine. He would have gotten washed out in the run game for sure because he wasn't ready for that. And he would have been very inconsistent when it came to creating pressure because his body wasn't there yet, but his lightning was there. You saw it in flashes, his speed, his quickness. He would have gotten sacks. I think he would have been fine. It's just, I also am never afraid of development. I'm never afraid of taking time with players. Truly. I'm never afraid of that. Aaron, would LeBron be the best player ever if he wins another championship? I mean, if he did, I even forgot the Lakers one. If he did it in Miami, Cleveland, the Lakers, and Minnesota, man. I mean, I don't know. I've never been into exactly the GOAT discussion. I know that it's fun sports conversation, but I think of generations is the way to do it. Who's the best player of the generation? Because the game changes so much since Michael Jordan. It's just very different from how it was during Jordan. If LeBron played in Jordan's era, there's all that like, oh, if LeBron play, oh my God, he would have killed everything, right? Just like Jordan did. I mean, he would have done the same thing. If he played in that era, in the way the game worked then, he would have been fine because he's the most unstoppable player in his prime, just like Jordan was. So, and the same thing goes for like the Wilt Chamberlain people, which I'm not down on anyone who says that. Or if you're an 80s person and you say Magic Johnson was the best that you've ever seen, that's generations. Like generations have their great players. So, I mean, LeBron is clearly of the last 25 years the best player in the NBA. But yeah, I mean, when you talk about legacy, if that's something that he cares about, and I guess, I mean, LeBron wants to make the documentary and all that, you know that his whole career is about chasing Jordan and everything else. I mean, coming to Minnesota, make the documentary. Think about how many downloads that thing would get if you won a championship here. Joker, was McCarthy too young and inexperienced to be drafted by us when we needed a guy like Bo Nix to be ready ASAP to fit in our window? So it seems, but we didn't know that then because what we thought was that McCarthy was going to get an entire year to develop. That's the problem. We assumed that McCarthy was going to get an entire year and then it was going to be behind Sam Darnold and then he was going to take over after that year of development and he didn't get it. So I think that process could have been accelerated, but instead it wasn't because he had to sit on the sidelines, which everyone underestimated, including me, very much. I was wrong about this. He went back to square one. I thought, well, he's going to pick up where he left off. And so did O'Connell, and so did the Wilfs, and so did Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, and so did everybody else. But he didn't. That's apparently not how it works. So with quarterback, if you sit out and don't throw a football and can't run for an entire 6 months, and you're already not the most natural thrower, apparently it has more of an impact than I projected. My bad. But that's kind of what happened there. Would Bo Nix have been a better fit? I mean, clearly he can play in the NFL and he could play right away because he got his team to the playoffs. And you could say, well, Denver had a great team. Well, the Vikings had a great team. So yeah, I think if that was the case, then Bo Nix would have been a better fit. Yeah, of course. I mean, he was clearly more ready than JJ McCarthy right away. Pop Punk Skull McCarthy is fine. Well, I mean, not really, since they went out and got a guy who has been a starting quarterback for I don't know how many games now, of how many years. So not really, but he does just need to grind. You were right about that. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. Like, he could end up turning out fine, but as of right now, this is not like what is the percentage chance that you end up being a franchise quarterback after your team goes out and acquires a different starter? Your odds go down pretty significantly. So it is on him to prove that that's wrong and prove that this is the development time that he actually needed. Anyway, well, glad I had a backup camera for today, huh? Always keep one ready this wasn't on the dog. There have been times where the dog has unplugged this before, but not tonight. So it still turned out just fine. Anyway, well, tomorrow night, Ben Gessling is going to join the show. He's going to pop over for a Porch podcast, or at least that's the plan. I'll be hosting on Real Radio tomorrow on WCCO and on Thursday night. So I won't be live here, but that doesn't mean the content is going to stop. There will still be podcasts. I just won't be able to answer questions. And we'll see about later in the week if anything comes up or whatever it might be. But I thank everybody very much for joining the show and jumping on board. And next week is going to be a huge week for previewing. Like I got into the running backs, but the wide receivers are on the way. And the offensive line, that might be an entire show. I got a text from Jeremiah Searles today saying, hey, when are we going to do a preview pod? So there is a lot to come as we get ready for camp. And I went to the Lynx game last night with Manny Hill, and we watched Olivia Miles and Kayla McBride go insane. 10,000 people in the arena. Even if the internet is saying the W is having its problems, it is not, I can confirm. And Olivia Miles is an unbelievable show. So if you get a chance to go see that at Target Center, make sure you do that. But anyway, so I was saying to Manny, the audience needs you. Need you to come back. Need you for a camp preview and picking the Viking schedule one more time before camp. So there is so much to come on the show, and I'm glad to have you guys along for the ride. So we will see you again soon for a live show. Just keep an eye out. I usually don't get asked to host on radio that much, so I'm going to take that opportunity, but I'll definitely be live again soon. Thanks, everybody.